first off. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So like I said, it's good to see everyone. Good to see everyone there. And let's start. If we can, we'll start today with the Shema. Can you guys see me? Do you see a slide? Or there's nothing? All right. How about now? Can you guys see me now? Are we there? Yeah? So, of course it worked in the trial and it worked in the preliminary, but for some reason it's not doing it now. Yeah, that's the fun of going live. All right, how about now? Do we have a transition? No? What are you guys looking at out there?
Facebook has a slide.
All right, you should be looking at the Shema. Can you guys see the Shema?
Facebook has it.
All right, so if you can say with me, and you got to say it really, really loud because I can't hear you otherwise. This is going to be fun. So let's start together. Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol mo'odecha Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. And we add Yeshua Hu HaMashiach Hu HaAsar Shalom Hu Adon Na'akol. Amen. And in English, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Blessed be his glorious sovereign name forever and ever. Yeshua is the Messiah. He is the Prince of Peace, and he is the Lord of all. Amen. Amen. To continue with the blessings, blessing for Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Makodesh HaShabbat. Blessed are you, O Lord, who hallows the Shabbat. And the blessing for salvation in Yeshua. I love this one in particular. It reads, Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu et derech ha-Yeshua b'Mashiach Yeshua Baruch Hu. Amen. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gave to us the way of salvation through the Messiah Yeshua. Blessed be he. Amen. And we continue with blessings over the sons, the daughters, and the men and the women. So we do this every Shabbat. And, even though we're not seeing together or blessing one another, face to face, we still need to be able to bless. And so I still feel we should include this in here today. So if you have children in your home, then pray for your children. If you don't have children in your home, pray for your brothers and sisters that do have children in their home, okay? And the same thing for the men and the ladies. It's not husbands and wives, it's men and women. And so this includes all of us. We're all a son or a daughter or a man or woman. So this includes us all. So we can get in there and do the blessings together, all right? So let's do that. So starting with the blessing for the sons, we read, Simcha Elohim Ephraim Vichi Menashe. May God make you a symbol of blessing like Ephraim and Menashe. And I'll take a moment and pray for your sons just on your own just for a moment. Okay, and so we've got that. And blessing for daughters. We'll just give you a minute just to pray there. For the daughters, Yisamech Elohim Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. May God make you a symbol of blessing as Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And take a minute to pray for your daughters. All right, blessing for the ladies. We read a section from Proverbs 31, verses 10 through 31. So we read this before we pray. Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. Who can find a woman of virtue? For her value is far above jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, so he has no lack of gain. She does good with him and not evil all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax, and she works with her hands with delight. She is like the merchant ships. She brings in her food from afar. She also rises while it is still night and gives game to her household and a portion to her maidens. She has examined a field and takes it, and she plants a vineyard from the fruit of her hands. She has girded her loins with strength and has made her arms strong. She tastes whether her gain is good, and her lamp is not put out by night. She has sent forth her hands on the distaff, and her hands have held the spindle. She spreads out her hands to the poor, yea, she stretches out her hands to the needy. And she is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She makes herself ornamental coverings, and her clothing is bleached linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits with the elders of the land. She makes fine linen garments and delivers girdles to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she shall rejoice at the day to come. She opens her mouth in wisdom, and the law of kindness is on her tongue. She watches the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, and her husband also, for he praises her. Many are the daughters who act with virtue, but you rise above them all. Grace may be deceitful and beauty vain, but a woman who fears Yahweh, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. Amen. Take a moment and pray for the ladies of the congregation. And the blessing for the men from Proverbs, Psalm 1. Psalm 1. Happy is the man that has not walked in the counsel of the wicked, nor stood in the way of sinners, nor sat in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law does he meditate day and night. And he shall be like the tree planted by streams of water, that brings forth its fruit in its season, and whose leaf does not wither, and in whatsoever he does, he shall prosper. Not so the wicked, but they are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord regards the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish. And say a prayer for the men of the assembly. Okay, a couple of readings just to turn our focus in here for Shabbat before we get into the message here. Psalm 95, 1 through 11 reads, Come, let's sing to Adonai. Let's shout for joy to the rock of our salvation. Let's come into his presence with thanksgiving. Let's shout for joy to him with songs of praise. For Adonai is a great God, a great King, greater than all gods. He holds the depths of the earth in his hands, and the mountain peaks too belong to him. The sea is his, he made it, and his hands shaped the dry land. Come, let's bow down and worship. Let's kneel before Adonai who made us. For he is our God, and we are the people in his pasture, the sheep in his care. If only today you would listen to his voice. Don't harden your hearts as you did at Meribah, as you did in the day of Massah in the desert. When your fathers put me to the test, they challenged me even though they saw my work. For 40 years I loathed that generation. I said, this is a people whose hearts go astray. They don't understand how I do things. Therefore I swore in my anger they would not enter into my rest. We need to make sure we are working to enter into his rest, right, guys? And that's Shabbat here. That's what we're doing here today, all right? Isaiah 58, verse 12, You will rebuild the ancient ruins, raise foundations from ages past, and be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets to live in. If you hold back your foot on Shabbat from pursuing your own interests on my holy day, if you call Shabbat a delight, Adonai's holy day worth honoring, then honor it by not doing your usual things or pursuing your interests or speaking about them. If you do, you will find delight in Adonai, and I will make you ride on the heights of the land and feed you with the heritage of your ancestor Yaakov, for the mouth of Adonai has spoken. And let's talk about joy. Psalm 1:2. Instead, they find joy in obeying the law of the Lord, and they study it day and night. Psalm 47:1. Clap your hands for joy, all you people. Praise God with loud songs. I don't hear any hand clapping in there. Clap louder. No, I'm kidding. Psalm 47:5. God goes up to his throne, and there are shouts of joy and the blasts of trumpets as the Lord goes up. Amen. Psalm 98:4. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Burst into jubilant song with music. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And making sure I'm drinking water here because I'm also talking kind of loud because I don't have a mic right here. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and we do have just a couple announcements just before we really get into the teaching in here. We would normally have a time of worship here. Due to copyright issues and other things going on, we really can't do that right now, and none of y'all want to hear me sing, so I'm not going to do that to you either. But for now, let's just cover a couple quick announcements here before we get into all this. So I know you're here on many of you watching Facebook or you may be watching YouTube, however that is. Don't forget about the other places where we're online, guys. Our Facebook page, Ruach Ministries, or our Instagram, for those of you that are on Instagram. Twitter, Ruach Tweets. YouTube is The Ruach Life. And Vimeo too, guys. If you get on Vimeo and Amazon Fire, you can look up Ruach Ministries International on Amazon Fire, and you can get a lot of our Torah teachings, things done that way as well. Don't forget about our podcast, guys. Keep this stuff in prayer so we help keep these moving out there. You can get it on Podbean, iTunes, or Spotify. And so if we are, for now, stopping to meet like we are, having to stop to meet, and please continue to look for us, mainly at this point right now on Facebook and on YouTube. And that's where we're working on other things, but this is where we're at for right now, okay? And so we've got to work with what we got, right? And for now, if you do want to continue giving, guys, this has been a blessing for you, and we're trying to help keep the word out and keep things moving along, and trying to get some sense of normalcy in the midst of all this. So if you do want to continue to give, you can still do that on our website. There we do have a donate button. If you go to PayPal directly, you can do ruachcontact@gmail.com. And of course, we do still have our snail mail address at a P.O. box out there as well. Okay? So what are we going to talk about today? Guys, it's less than 2 weeks to Passover. And, we said at back in the beginning, a few months ago, back in the beginning of the Gregorian calendar, start getting ready for Passover now. Start thinking about it now, because it's going to get here before you know it. And it is. Here we are. And did it catch you by surprise? In the midst of everything else that's going on in the world and everything else that's happening, did we forget to prepare for Passover? Are we looking for the leaven? Are we looking for things? Guess what, guys? Many of us are home right now. We kind of have to be. So we need to continue to look for the leaven and look for the things and make preparations for Passover. The world is in a crazy state right now, guys, but Passover is going to happen with or without you. Kind of like Shabbat, the days cycle with or without you. And we need to be found faithful to what the Father's calling us to do. So we're going to talk just for a little bit about Passover today and preparation. And the biggest thing is to prepare our hearts, obviously. That is the biggest thing. But, a lot of times when we say we just need to prepare our hearts, that we look at this in an abstract way where it relieves us of any responsibility to physically make preparation. And guys, the Moedim and the festivals and the things that we've been given, they're eternal. And so these are things we need to continue to do. I mean, if even the observances we have, they're memorials of things that have happened and looking forward to things that are yet to be in many cases. So we've got to keep doing what the Father has called us to do. And so Passover, there's a lot to talk about there. And Passover is rich with meaning and rich with things that is beneficial for us all. So let's take a look at Passover. And we're going to talk about a people redeemed, which, guess what, guys? That's you. You are a people redeemed. But first, let's get into the Moedim, Leviticus 23, 4 through 11. We read verse 4. These are the designated times of Adonai, the holy convocations you are to proclaim at their designated times. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between sundown and complete darkness, comes Pesach for Adonai. Notice Pesach for who? For Adonai. On the 15th day of the same month is the festival of Matzah. For 7 days you are to eat matzah. On the first day you are to have a holy convocation. Don't do any kind of ordinary work. Bring an offering made by fire to Adonai for 7 days. And on the 7th day is a holy convocation. Don't do any kind of ordinary work. Verse 9. Adonai said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, after you enter the land that I am giving you, and you harvest its ripe crops, you are to bring a sheaf of the first fruit of the harvest to the Kohen, and he is to wave the sheaf before Adonai, so that you will be accepted. And the Kohen is to wave it on the day after the Shabbat. So this is an omer. This is where we get the idea of counting the omer. So what's an omer? Well, it's the sheaf that's given that is waved as on the day of first fruits. Don't forget about that too. I mean, there's a big deal with first fruits, even though first fruit wasn't a commanded gathering. But without the principle of the first fruit, I mean, really, it shows the Messiah being accepted as the first fruit for us on our behalf. And if the first fruit is accepted and the first fruit is holy, then the rest of the crop is holy. And so that's something that we need to look at, okay? Because that signifies us. If Yeshua was received, then we are received. And if he's not received, we're not received. There's a lot there, all right? So let's look. Passover was an act of redemption. Let's not forget that. The backstory of this, we got to go all the way back to Abraham. The backstory for all this is back to Abraham, guys. We often think when we talk about Passover that it's just about here it is. These people they were enslaved in Egypt, and they came out, and there was these great plagues and these things that happened. But God judged Egypt, and He brought His people out, and that happened. But don't forget, it's not like it just all of a sudden out of nowhere they're in Egypt. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I mean, they became enslaved. No, there was a process to all this. And don't forget that when God told them, I'm going to redeem you and bring you out, He told Abraham that this was going to happen. Okay? So let's take a look at it. Genesis 15:13. So He says to Avram, know of a surety that your seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and they shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward they shall come out with great substance. So it was an act of redemption. It was there. Okay, so Exodus 2:23. And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of bondage, and they cried. Their cry came up to God by reason of the bondage, and God heard their groanings, and God what? Remembered His covenant with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and God looked upon the children of Israel, and He had respect to them. Now, keep in mind, guys, that when it says, and God remembered the covenant that He made with Abraham, it's not like He forgot. Okay? When it says that God remembered something, the word for remember is not like, oh, I forgot something now. Oh, yeah, now I remembered. No, it means to act on behalf of something, to have an action associated with something. What is happening is He's saying, now is the time to act on the covenant that I made with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. That's what He's saying. So the people are in Egypt, and they cry out, and God says, I will act on the covenant that I made with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. So this redemption and this pulling the people out, this is what God told Abraham was going to happen. You know, it was prophesied is what I'm saying. And much like the redemption that's given for us. You know, from the beginning, Yah said he has a way to redeem mankind. And we can trust in Him for that. So back to the redemption that's going on here. Exodus 3. So let's look at Exodus 3. So now Moshe was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, and he came, this is verses 1 through 10, and this is, again, Reader's Digest version, okay, the highlights of the verses. And it came to Horeb, the mountain of God, and the angel of Yahweh appeared to him in the flame out of the fire in the midst of the bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet not consumed. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, the God of Yaakov. And Moshe hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them. And I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So if we look here, there are 4 expressions of redemption that Yahweh tells Moshe. Okay? And this is associated with the cups that are given at Passover. There's 4 different ways that Yahweh says He's going to redeem His people here. Okay. Now, when we say that God has redeemed us, we often just think, okay, redemption, it's just one thing. But there's actually different parts in that if you kind of break it down. So when the Father says that He will redeem you, He's doing more really than we attribute to it. Okay, so let's take a quick look at it. This is also similar to the 4 cups at Pesach. This is why I believe there are 4 cups at Pesach. Exodus 6, 6 and 7, therefore say to the people of Israel, Ani Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, I am Yahweh. Much like the first commandment that's given here, it's about relationship to acknowledge Yahweh as the one who has redeemed you. Back to Exodus 20, verse 1 and 2. And God said all these words, I am Adonai your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the abode of slavery. Keep in mind, guys, the very first commandment is, I am the Lord your God that brought you out of the land of slavery. So the very first thing that Yahweh is telling us is relationship. The very first thing He's wanting us to have is acknowledgement that we will be His. We will walk with Him. We will honor Him. We will enter covenant with Him. We will keep covenant with Him. We will follow His ways and whatever He desires. Okay? So that's the first thing we acknowledge is relationship. All right? So Exodus 6, 6 and 7, He says, I will free you from the forced labor of the Egyptians, rescue you from their oppression, redeem you with an outstretched arm with great judgments. I will take you as my people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am Adonai your God, who freed you from the forced labor of the Egyptians. So let's start with this. He says, I will free you. In other words, I will bring you out. That is yatzah. Yatzah is a word that's used there, and it means to carry out or to rise or to send with commandment. You know, when Yah says that He sent us out, He freed us, did He not command us? Did He not raise us up out of where we were? So again, this is part of the process, right? Part of the way we're looking. Then He says, I will rescue you. That's the word natzal. Rescue also means to defend, to deliver, to preserve, or to recover. To redeem is Ga'al. Goel is a redeemer, like we've heard about, a kinsman redeemer, like as Yeshua being our kinsman redeemer. This is the same word that's used there, okay? Same word that's used there, Ga'al. And it means to redeem or to be the next of kin or to purchase. When He says He redeemed you, that's why I say we've been bought with a price. And then the word lakach, it says, I will take you as my people. Lakach means to accept, to bring in, you were drawn, and or to send for, so we are accepted to Him. So when we look at Passover, there's not just one thing that's given in Passover here. I mean, when we say the time of Passover, we generally just say Passover, but there's really multiple feasts that are going on in this time frame of Passover. You know, there's more than one thing going on, which there's always more than one thing going on, right? There's more than one thing going on here. Pesach is one night. So then why do they say Passover lasts for a week? Passover doesn't last for a week. The Feast of Unleavened Bread is 7 days. So this is what we're looking at. But in the time frame of a week span, you have multiple things that are going on, all right? So you have Pesach, then you have Hag HaMatzah, which is the festival of matzah. Then you have Bikurim, which is the first fruit. And then you have counting the Omer, which leads us to Shavuot. And so this is a time frame that leads us back to Shavuot. That's the counting the Omer is the 50 days leading. And we know in the scripture it says you were to count 7 weeks, past 7 weeks, past 7 Shabbats, the 50th day, the next day, the 50th day is Shavuot. Well, that starts on the Feast of First Fruits. Okay, so if we don't look at first fruit, then where do we know when Shavuot's supposed to be? So again, this is all, it all ties together, guys. It's all part of the process the Father wants to take us through. So the redemption of the people of Yah was so dramatic that they were to memorialize the act by counting the calendar from it. Check it out, guys. Exodus 12, 1 and 2. So Yahweh says to Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt, this month shall be the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Check it out, guys. Happy New Year. Hey, we just entered into the first biblical month. You know, they counted the months and the times generally from the springtime, what we would now call the 7th month. They used to call as the first of the counting for the calendar. But now God is saying that this is what I'm doing here in your midst is so dramatic for you that you are going to order your life, and all the Moedim and everything that's established here is going to be set from this time forward. Think about it. All the Moedim point to your redemption. That's exciting, guys. All your Moedim point to we belong to the Father. We're in relationship with Him, and He redeemed us. He brought us out of slavery. He freed us from sin, right? He brought us out of slavery. He freed us from bondage, and all these things are just amazing. And so in all of our observance and honoring of Him, we honor what He's done for us, all right? So starting out, Yahweh heard their cry from their bondage. Psalm 18:6, in my distress I called upon Yahweh. To my God I cried for help from His temple, and He heard my voice, and my cry to Him reached His ears. Isaiah 65:19, I will rejoice in Jerusalem and be glad in my people. No more shall be heard the sound of weeping and the cry of distress. Boy, that's good stuff, guys. So back to Exodus 3, verse 7. Then Yahweh says, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry because they're taskmasters, and I know their sufferings. Guys, I would read that Hebrew there, but on the screen I'm looking at, it's awful small. So forgive me. Isaiah 53, 3 through 5. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and as one from whom men hid their faces. He was despised, yet we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteem him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. With his stripes we are healed. Some translations say in fellowship with him we are healed. It really means the same thing, guys. By his stripes we are healed, or in fellowship with him we are healed, because it all does come down to relationship, doesn't it? All right, so back to this. Exodus 3, 7 through 10. So we already read 7, 8. And I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them out of the land that is good, and a broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, and any other ites you guys can think of, throw in there. Verse 9, and now behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians have oppressed them. Verse 10, come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So how did he do all this? How did Yah deliver his people? Well, he judged their world. He judged Mitzrayim. He judged those around. And because the ones who oppressed them, remember God says when he was talking to Avram, he says that your descendants will go down to a land that's not theirs. They will oppress them. They will serve them. It'll be 400 years. But I will judge those who oppress them. So again, this is time for judgment to come out. And we know that each of the plagues Yahweh was attacking, or throwing down, if you will, different deity, something that was held in a place of deity among Egypt, and he was saying that he is the only God, he is the one true God, in the midst of the judgments and plagues and the things that were going on, okay? So he gives the judgments, he gives the plagues, and the last one is the one that really got everything, okay? The one that really allowed them to go through. It was the last one, the death of the firstborn. And that's kind of what we're looking at now. The firstborn can be given over to life or be given over to death, and we have a role in that, on our obedience and what's given there. So let's look at it. Exodus 11:4. Moshe said, "Here's what Adonai says: about midnight I will go out into Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on the throne, his firstborn, to the slave girl at the handmill, and the firstborn of the livestock. There will be horrendous wailing throughout the land of Egypt. There has never been another like it, or there never will be again." So what we're looking at, Yahweh says he's going to go through about midnight and he's going to slay all the firstborn. Well, is that it? We just have no hope? He's just going to do it and no one can be delivered from this? No. As I'm saying, God is making a provision here for his people. And he's saying this is going to happen. But then he says how his people are going to be protected. And it's interesting because, when Yahweh tells them to do this, they could say, "Oh, I think you're taking things a little too literally, don't you think? I mean, the applying the blood over the doorpost of the lintel is supposed to be a metaphor." And then guess what? Well, your firstborn died. I think sometimes Yahweh is just asking us to do what he said. We can hyper spiritualize something, or we can theorize something, or just talk about metaphors and do all day long. But sometimes Yahweh is just asking us to be obedient, and He's just asking us to listen to Him. All right, let's go back. Exodus 11:4 or 11 verse 7. But not even a dog's growl will be heard against any of the people of Israel, neither against people nor the animals. In this way, you will realize that Adonai distinguishes between the Egyptians and Israel. So he's saying, in this way, you will realize that Yahweh makes a distinction. He distinguishes between His people and those of the world. Guys, there is a distinction, isn't there? Even little things that we do every day. Wearing tzitzit, it makes a distinction. Honoring Shabbat, it makes a distinction. When we are a people set apart, and we live as a people set apart, there are distinctions in your life that will make you be different from the rest of the world. And that's what we're supposed to do. Even now, especially now, we're supposed to have things to make distinctions among Yahweh's people that can be seen. All right? Psalm 4, verse 3. Understand that Adonai sets apart the godly person for Himself, and Adonai will hear when I call to Him. That's what we're talking about, the same kind of thing that's given there. So what we find is that Pesach was a separation of the people of Yahweh. So this is a distinction that's made between Israel and the world. And what is the distinction? The blood must be applied. The people of Israel must partake in the lamb. They must prepare themselves for their deliverance. And when they were told to walk out of Mitzrayim, they had to walk out of Egypt and not before. Oh, that's a big one, guys. When we talk about the observance of Passover, I think it was Rabbi Gamliel who said that there are really just three main things that you need. You need the matzah, the lamb, and the bitter herbs. And the rest of it is just part of the ceremony and part of the Seder, different things that's there, which is fine. It's good to honor and remember what the Father has given us and why. To read through the Passover story and to read through the things. But the key elements, three main things in the story, is the matzah, the lamb, and the bitter herbs. So when they did this, they took the lamb, they applied the blood over, and we'll get more into that coming up soon. But and then when the time came, He said, about midnight, I'm going to pass through the land of Egypt, and as I pass through, all the firstborn in the houses are going to die, except for the ones that have the blood. And so what would have happened if someone would have said, okay, so here we are, man, it's getting awful tired, I'm getting tired of waiting, it's probably about 10 o'clock, and we've slaughtered the lamb, we've applied the blood, we've done what we're supposed to do. Plus, God said He's going to deliver us. We have His promise on that. We have His word on that. I'm tired of waiting. Let's just go. And so they just get up and they go. Someone's going to die because they were not where they were supposed to be at the time they were supposed to be there. What we've learned, and this is a process of time sometimes, what we've learned is that the when of something is just as important as the what. And sometimes it's a hard lesson to learn. Because, we get the what, this is what we're supposed to do, this is how we're supposed to do it, but we miss the when. Kind of like honoring Shabbat. Well, we know we should honor Shabbat, we know we keep His word, we walk in His ways, but can we just pick any day of the week to be Shabbat? No. So the when of something is often just as important as the what. And so when Yahweh was going through the midst of Egypt, He was looking for people who were obedient to His word to do what He said. We'll get more of that in a minute. All right. The phrase Pesach, or Passover, actually refers to the lamb, not just the fact that Yahweh passed over the homes. We often say, so this is the time of Passover, the time that Yahweh passed over the people, their houses of the houses of Israel, and so, okay. Here's the thing, guys. When we say the Passover, when we're referencing the Passover, it's not really talking about when He passed over the homes. The phrasing, everything that's done, the way grammatically that it's written. When they say Pesach, Passover, it's specifically referring to the lamb itself. So the importance or the emphasis for Passover is the lamb. All right. So keeping on, Exodus 12:11. In this manner you shall eat it, with your belt fastened, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. You shall eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Passover. Whose Passover? Is it a Passover for the Jews? No, it's Yahweh's Passover. It is Yahweh's lamb. It is the time Yahweh has appointed. Even when you go to Leviticus 23 and you read about the Moedim, it says these are Yahweh's appointed times. Okay? So this is not just something for the Jews. This is a God thing. Okay? Not just a Jewish thing. It is it's something that Yahweh has established for his people. And if we are his people, if we are called by his name, we've got a role in this. We need to follow what he's saying. All right? So back to the scripture. Exodus 12:27. So you shall say it is the sacrifice of Yahweh's Passover. See, notice that? It is the sacrifice of Yahweh's Passover. That's the lamb. Then it says, for he passed over the houses of the people of Israel in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians, but spared our houses. And the people bowed their heads and they worshipped. So Exodus 12:43. Yahweh says to Moshe and Aaron, this is the statute of the Passover. No foreigner shall eat of it. Exodus 12:48. If a stranger shall sojourn with you, and you keep the Passover to Yahweh, let all his males be circumcised, then he may come near and keep it. He shall be the native of the land. He shall be as a native of the land, but no uncircumcised person shall eat it. Leviticus 23:5. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at twilight, is Yahweh's Passover. Notice here, who partakes of the Passover? No foreigner, no stranger, nothing like that. So only those who are in covenant, only those who are in relationship will keep the Passover. You can't just say, wow, that looks like a mighty fine meal. I'd like to partake in that. Or you can't just say, well, it's about time for Passover. I think I'll come and observe this day of Passover. But then the rest of the year, you have no concern for what God has said about you or your life. That's not relationship. That's not keeping covenant. So again, those who keep covenant are the ones who are told to keep the Passover, right? All right, moving on. Exodus 12:13. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague will befall or destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. This day shall be a memorial day, and you shall keep it as a feast to Yahweh throughout your generations as a statute forever. You shall keep it as a feast. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall remove the leaven out of your houses, for if anyone eats what is leavened from the first day to the seventh day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. Verse 16. On the first day you shall hold a holy assembly, and on the seventh day a holy assembly. No work shall be done on those days, but what everyone needs to eat, that alone may be prepared for you. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for on this very day I brought your hosts out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you shall observe this day throughout your generations as a statute forever. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at the evening, this is between the evenings, between the 14th and the 15th, you shall eat unleavened bread from the 21st day of the month at evening. Okay? For 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses. If anyone eats what is leavened, that person will be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he's a sojourner or the native of the land. You shall eat nothing leavened, and in all your dwelling places you shall eat unleavened bread. Then Moses called the elders of Israel and said to them, go and select lambs for yourselves according to your clans or families, and kill the Passover lamb. Verse 22, take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and touch the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. None of you shall go out of the door of your house until the morning. For Yahweh will pass through and strike the Egyptians. And when he sees the blood on the lintel and the 2 doorposts, Yahweh will pass over the door and will not allow the destroyer to enter your houses to strike you. You shall observe this rite as a statute for you and for your sons forever. So what we find here is that the blood was to be applied. I've always thought about, really interesting, when he comes through the land, is it like he needed to see the blood over the door to know who was his, to know who would be allowed, or was he really looking for obedience? Was this a sign for the people of Israel, or was this a sign for Yahweh himself to come down? This is a marker, so this person's got the blood, or that one, is that one mine or not? I don't know. Or was this also a sign to the Egyptians and to the rest of the world, if you will, that these people are set apart. These people are the people of Yahweh. There's a lot to be said about that. I believe that Yahweh knew who was his, but then there are things he asks us to do to set us apart so that the world will be seeing us as a people set apart. Because we live differently than the rest of the world. And we are, his ways are higher than our ways. Some things we can't understand. I mean, don't we see in the scripture where it says that people will see the good things that you do and glorify your Father in heaven? So if we're not doing what Yahweh has told us to do, then we're not showing his character to those around us, right? So the blood was to be applied on and out of obedience to the doorpost and the lintel. And what we find is the top and the bottom, or the top and the sides of the door. And it's interesting because the top and the sides, the word there for the doorposts, the word there for doorposts is mezuzah. And many people observe putting a mezuzah on the door frames of the homes. On the side of the home, they put this little box, and it's there, and it's about eye level. And so when they put this on there, it's called a mezuzah. Well, the thing is, it's called a mezuzah because that's where it goes. Okay, the door frame itself is the mezuzah. All right, so they're attaching something to the door frame. They're putting the blood on the door frame. So what is this? Much like now, mezuzah is placed on the doors and on the gates. And on the mezuzah, many of them will put the Hebrew letter Shin, and this is standing for Shaddai, as in El Shaddai, like in Exodus 6:3, where he says, I appeared to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov as El Shaddai. So it's a reminder of El Shaddai, which I also believe is an acronym for Shomer Dalet Yisrael, which is to say that God is the watchman or the keeper of the doors of Israel. So what we're saying is that when we are putting the mezuzah on our door, putting the word on the door frame, or even you could say putting the blood there, the blood of the lamb there, what we're saying is that we don't belong to us, we belong to somebody else, and that letting the other people around know that we're different, we're set apart. I am to put an acknowledgement of El Shaddai for this home, for my family, for my life, that others can see. So that's what we're doing here. We're attaching this, okay? So the blood being applied and the word being applied, we see these two working together, which we'll come back to in a minute, all right? So the blood being applied to the mezuzah was to tell the story of rest, redemption, and consolation to all Israel. So this is a story of rest, redemption, and consolation to all Israel. So what we find is that El Shaddai guarded the homes by the word and the blood being applied to it. And we even see this in the future. Revelation 12:11. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. Revelation 19:13. He was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. So again, we have the blood and the word working together. Okay, even Moshe, when he made a covenant at Sinai, and with the book of the covenant that he read aloud to the people, and then they took the offering, the Olah offering and a peace offering, and he took some blood and put half in the base and two basins, and half was put towards the altar, and the other half was sprinkled to the people. And he said, "This is the blood of the covenant that Yahweh has made with you in accordance with these words." So for the covenant, it was the blood and the words working together. All right. So even this, it's a mark of redemption. To have a mark of redemption is to have the blood and the words working together in your life. All right. Moving on. For Passover, the message was heard by all. The question is it just the hearing that they needed to do? Take a drink of water there. The hearing alone didn't matter. If they heard the word and they did not obey it, they would lose their firstborn. Think about this, guys. We say, oh, we just have to hear it. We don't have to actually do it. We don't have to do the things that God has said. We just got to hear what he said, you know. If they took that approach, someone lost their life. We have to consider the things that Yahweh has said. He told us his way so that we can walk in them. Now, do I think that we can slaughter a lamb today and apply the blood to the doorpost? No. because the lambs were supposed to be slaughtered. We find this, in the Torah, it's supposed to be slaughtered at the place where Yahweh has placed his name, and that was in Jerusalem at the temple. That it doesn't stand, so it'll be a little hard to do. You'll be waiting a long time, okay? But at the same time, it doesn't mean that the principle has changed or that what Yahweh has said has changed, especially in these first times, and in the first observance that we're given here. All right, what Yahweh wanted was obedience, and that's what the people had to keep in mind. All right, what he wanted was obedience. Those that had faith in Yahweh obeyed, and they were passed over. Yahweh knew who were his. He didn't need to see the blood to know. He was looking for faith. Hebrews 4, 1 through 3. Faith is waving to me from the other room, guys. Yes, she is here. Hebrews 4, 1 through 3. Therefore, let us be terrified of the possibility that even though the promise of entering his rest remains, lest any of you might be judged to have fallen short of it. For the good news has also been proclaimed to us just as it was to them, but the message they heard didn't do them any good because those who heard it did not combine it with trust or faith. For it is we who have trusted enter into the rest, just as it is said, and in my anger I swore that they would not enter my rest. He swore this even though his works have been in existence since the founding of the universe. What Yahweh was looking for was obedience, but let me put it this way. He was looking for faith. If we have faith in the word of Yah, then we will act on what we have faith in. Okay? If we have faith in Yah, we will act on his word. Faith is not some abstract thought. It's not just saying I believe something and then not having any action to back up the belief. James says faith without works is dead. So in other words, we say we have faith, but we have to live on that faith where others can see it, right? Matter of fact, the great faith chapter in the scripture, Hebrews chapter 11, right? By faith, all these great things happen, and all these great things we're talking about different people. Go through and read it. Hebrews chapter 11, what we find is by faith, somebody did something. So there's faith and then an action that was associated with that faith. Same thing for us. Yahweh says, are you going to believe my word? Are you going to believe what I say? And if so, I expect you to be obedient to that. All right? So those who believed were delivered. All right? Let's take a look at that. All who believed were delivered. Exodus 12:38. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and the flocks and the herds, and even very much cattle. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not tarry, neither had they prepared themselves any victual. So a mixed multitude went up with them. I do believe there are some of the Egyptians that came out with them because they said, your God is God, no doubt. And I think that they learned in the process of the plagues that they saw that he is the one true God. So a mixed multitude came up with them. I do believe that. And then I also believe that while they were in the wilderness, that there were those who came out and joined them as well. So how does this work through? I mean, how did they show that they had faith in Yahweh at this time? Well, they had to take the lamb, they had to slaughter it. And where did they do this? Well, they did this at the door. They did this at the threshold. And many homes, if we look at the threshold, they had a basin or a bowl at the base of the threshold. In many ancient Near Eastern cultures, I'm not going to go into the thing with the threshold covenant because Rico did a great job on that, and I don't need to rehash that. But there's a basin or a bowl at the bottom of the threshold where the blood was captured, and then the blood could be applied to the sides and to the top posts of the home. So when we look at Exodus 12:22, we find take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin. What basin are they talking about? The word there is saf. It's used there for basin. The original sense of like a dish for holding blood or wine at the where? Threshold. All right. So take it in this basin at the threshold, and to catch the blood from the lamb there, and then you use hyssop to apply on the doorposts and the lintel, and across the top and on the sides of the door frame as well. All right. So Exodus 12:23, the threshold covenant. Why was this done? Because it was an acknowledging that whoever enters in from this place would be a partaker of covenant with you. Exodus 12:23, Yahweh will pass through The aver, that's the word is avar, that's used there, like Passover, crossover, same as we get the word Hebrew from. So the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he sees the blood on the lintel and the two side posts, Yahweh will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your house or to smite you. So in ancient Egypt and other cultures, they would carve the names of their deities to the entrance of their homes. In contrast, we have Deuteronomy 6:4-9, which is in the mezuzahs that are put up. There's 3 passages of Scripture. The Shema, it's given, right? There's 3 passages of Scripture in there from Deuteronomy 6, from Deuteronomy 11, from Numbers 15. And so this is put on the doorpost. And so in ancient Near Eastern cultures, they would put the names of their deity on the doorpost. And so what happened when they were putting the mezuzah or the blood on the doorpost, they were putting the names of Yahweh, that he is the one who passes over. And it is a place of covenant, a blood covenant. This is a place of covenant with the Most High. We do not serve any other God here, and we are acknowledging that even in our homes. We have a reminder of that, right? We read Deuteronomy 6:4, the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by your way, when you lie down, when you arise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So again, this is the writing on the doorposts and writing on the house and the gates. It was an acknowledgement to others. You serve El Shaddai. You serve the Almighty God. There is none other for you. And a reminder for you that when you go in and out of the home, it is Yahweh who goes before you. And even when you come home, it is Yahweh that goes before you even in your home. That when we go out to honor his name. When we come into our home, we come in even so to honor his name just as much as well, right? So in ancient Near Eastern culture, sacrifices were made at the threshold of the homes. This was a show of covenant. Like the blood, threshold, and covenant, they're all working together. So the Egyptians had a spring celebration that included the sacrifices of a pig, offerings of honey, and leavened cakes. Check this out. In contrast, Yahweh says you're going to have a lamb with bitter herbs and unleavened bread. It's like there's going to be no misunderstanding. You are not partaking of this spring festival of these other cultures, and everything you're doing is going to be completely counterculture from what's happening over there. No confusion about the God that you serve. You do not serve anyone else. You don't worship Yahweh the way that the Egyptians worshiped their gods, right? All right. So back to Exodus 12, verse 25. So when you come into the land that Yahweh will give you as he had promised, you shall keep this service. And when your children say to you, what do you mean by this service? You shall say, it is the sacrifice of Yahweh's Passover, for he passed over the houses of the people of Israel in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians, but spared our houses, and the people bowed their heads and they worshipped. And the people of Israel went and did so as Yahweh commanded Moses and Aaron, and so they did. So how do we do the observation of Passover? How is this done? Well, on the 10th day of the month, they were to select a lamb that was without blemish. On the 10th day of the month, they were to select a lamb without blemish. And so it's not like they could just go and just grab any lamb from anywhere. There were certain time frames on it. It had to be a certain age, and it had to be spotless. No spots, no blemishes, anything like that. In other words, they're not going to go to a pagan temple and grab a lamb and steal a lamb out of there, or even purchase a lamb out of there to give to Yahweh. Something had been dedicated to another deity. They're going to use that for Yah? No, they're not. Okay, they're not going to do that. So a spotless lamb is what you're going to take. On the 10th, choose a lamb without blemish. Keep it until the 14th and slaughter it as the evening of the 15th approaches. Between the evenings is how we're looking there. And place the blood on the side posts and the top posts of the doors. And then they were to eat the lamb, all of it. None left till morning. And how are they supposed to cook the lamb? And not boiled. It was supposed to be roasted over fire. God loves a good barbecue, I'm telling you. All right, who doesn't, right? So roasted over fire, and then none of the lamb left over till morning. Interesting, this is the same provision that's put on a peace offering, guys. When you partake of a peace offering, you are partaking of a covenant meal with Yahweh. You are eating from his altar. The meal that was put on his altar, the meat that was up on his altar, you get portions of that back, and you were to partake of that and eat in that in a holy place in honor of Yah. So literally, you are eating from his table when you partake of a peace offering. And guys, the Passover was a type of a peace offering. Okay, so it says here's what you did: you eat the lamb, all of it, with bitter herbs and with matzah. But the Passover didn't stop at the meal. Now, the Pesach itself was only one night. But if all this was just one night and that's done, well, now what? Well, no, they still have to come out. Okay, so the Pesach was one night to be observed, but the result of that one night changed lives forever. And that's what we're looking at here, okay? So they came out, and then they came to the sea, and they went through it. Not getting into that today. But they came to the mountain to be equipped and to receive the word, to show how to show relationship. The Mishkan, to have his presence dwelling with him. And then they were charged to go into the promise. So what he said is, when Yah brought them out, it wasn't just, okay, we kept Passover, now we're in the wilderness, now what do we do? And God's like, I've set you free, you go do whatever you want. No. See, now that he redeems you and sets you free, he brings you to the mountain to teach you his ways, to show how to prepare your heart, prepare a place for him to dwell in your midst. That's the tabernacle, that's the Mishkan. And learn to walk with him, learn to walk in his ways, learn to have relationship with him, learn to have relationship with one another, and how to carry his presence in the wilderness that we're in until we finally get to the place of his promise and the place where we can all dwell together. That's a lot, isn't it? But that is the idea for Pesach. Pesach is a time of redemption, a time of thanking Yah that he has redeemed us, and a time of learning to walk together to a common goal. And we've got to do a good job of that, guys, because the world is waiting to tear people apart. As a people of Yah, we don't need to divide. As a people of Yahweh, we don't need to be separating from one another. Matter of fact, Yeshua says if we don't gather with him, we're scattering. We don't want to be scattering. We want to be ones to gather. And it's kind of hard to do when we're not supposed to leave our homes. But still, Yahweh says we need to be ones to gather to help bring in the harvest, to help bring in the people that are supposed to be there. And looking towards the fall festivals, we're not getting into that today. But with all that, guys, I hope you're getting ready for Passover. I hope you're getting what you need, looking for the leaven, searching things out. Don't take anything for granted as you look for the leaven, because what we've learned, man, they put it in everything. You look at it, you're like, why in the world is that in there? So please, don't take anything for granted. Examine it all, because here's the extreme short story of it. Yahweh is trying to teach us spiritual principles in a very physical way. He is trying to teach us to discern within ourselves how we look at the sin in our life, the things that corrupt, the things that cause decay, because we know that leaven is actually a process of decay. You know, leavened bread, the leavening of it, it's actually a process of decay. It's breaking it down. So as we're looking for the leaven in our homes, let's keep in mind we're supposed to look for the leaven in our heart is what we're supposed to be doing. And but God is teaching us, don't take anything for granted. Don't take anything at face value. Look at it, discern it, find out what's there and why, and so that we can be clean, so that we can get rid of the leaven, so that we can, as Paul says, so keep the feast, not with the leaven, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. So that's you guys. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll try to address whatever glitches and things that we can, and hopefully we'll have that set up and finished by next week, all right? So appreciate you guys tuning in, really do. Love you all. And if you did enjoy this, please like it, please share it, and please help get this out there, okay? And so with that, let's close off with the Aaronic benediction, the Aaronic blessing, which is found in Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 through 26. Sorry, guys, I am not going to sing it. or I should say, I'm not sorry. I'm not going to sing it. And if I did sing it, you would be sorry. So I'm not going to do that. But Yahweh says that when you bless my children, I will place my name upon them and give them peace. We know His name is His character. It is His life. It is every aspect of who He is. He is imparting to us to make us whole and complete before Him. And as He says, when you bless them, you shall bless them like this. Yivarechecha Yahweh v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Yahweh panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisah Yahweh panav elecha v'yasim lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, guys. Blessings to you all. Love you so much. Thanks for tuning in. And until next week, hopefully we can gather face to face soon. So, Shabbat Shalom, everybody.